The funeral reception at the Riverside Country Club was exactly the kind of event my grandfather would have hated. Ostentatious, expensive, and full of relatives he'd barely spoken to in years. But my Uncle Richard had insisted on giving Harold the send-off he deserved, which apparently meant an open bar and catered dinner for 60 people who'd suddenly rediscovered their love for the family patriarch. I sat alone at a corner table wearing my only black dress and watching my extended family network among themselves. Conversations centered on memories they'd invented for the occasion and speculation about Grandpa's estate, which everyone assumed would be divided among his 3 children. My father, Uncle Richard, and Aunt Catherine. "Emma looks so sad over there," I heard Aunt Catherine say to a group of cousins. "It must be difficult losing her grandfather when she's already struggling so much." "She was always his favorite," Cousin Brad replied. "Too bad she never made anything of herself. Harold was disappointed about that, you know." "Such a waste," agreed Cousin Michelle. "All that potential and she ended up as a librarian. Harold used to say she could have been anything." I continued eating my chicken parmesan and pretended not to hear their assessment of my life choices. At 29 I was the family anomaly, college-educated but not wealthy, professional but not prestigious, independent but not married. In their minds I was a cautionary tale about wasted opportunities. What they didn't know was that Grandpa and I had maintained a close relationship right up until his death 3 weeks ago. While they'd visited during holidays and birthdays, I'd stopped by his house every Sunday for the past 5 years. We'd drink coffee on his back porch and discuss everything from local politics to my work at the university library's special collections department. "You're the only one who visits because you want to, not because you want something," he'd told me many times. "That means more than those fools realize." But according to family narrative, Grandpa had been disappointed in my lack of ambition and concerned about my financial future. After the meal, Uncle Richard called for attention. He stood at the front of the room, looking every inch the successful businessman in his tailored suit and gold watch. "I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for coming to celebrate Harold's life," he began. "As you know, Dad was a practical man who believed in taking care of family. Tomorrow we'll be meeting with his attorney to discuss the will, but I wanted to share some of the details tonight." The room went quiet. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. "Dad left his estate to be divided among his children," Richard continued. "Catherine, Frank, and myself will inherit equal shares of his assets, including the house, investments, and business interests." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Several relatives nodded knowingly as if they'd expected this outcome. As for the grandchildren, Richard paused dramatically. "Dad made specific provisions based on their circumstances and achievements." My stomach tightened. I could see where this was going. Brad, Michelle, and Jennifer will each receive $50,000 to help with down payments on their first homes. Dad was proud of their career success and wanted to support their next steps. The 3 cousins smiled and accepted congratulations from nearby relatives. "And Emma," Richard's voice took on a sympathetic tone, "Dad understood that your circumstances are different. He felt that a large inheritance might not be appropriate given your current lifestyle choices." The room went quiet again, but this time with uncomfortable tension. "You get nothing from Grandpa's will," Richard announced with barely concealed smugness. "He knew you were a disappointment and felt that leaving you money would only enable poor decision-making." The words hit like a physical blow. Around the room, relatives avoided my eyes, some looking embarrassed and others nodding in agreement. "However," Richard continued, "Dad did ask that we help you if you ever decide to pursue a more stable career path. We're family after all." I set down my fork and looked around the room at my family's faces. Some showed pity, others showed satisfaction, but none showed surprise. They'd all expected this outcome. "That seems fair," Aunt Catherine added gently. "Harold always hoped Emma would find her direction eventually. Maybe this will be the motivation she needs," Cousin Brad suggested. "Sometimes tough love is what it takes." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I need some air." I walked out of the country club and stood in the parking lot, processing what had just happened. According to my uncle, my grandfather had considered me such a disappointment that he deliberately excluded me from his will. The problem was, I knew that wasn't true. The build-up. What my family didn't know was that 6 months ago, Grandpa had asked me to help him update his estate planning. As someone with experience in archival research and document management, I'd assisted him in organizing his financial records and legal papers. "These lawyers charge a fortune just to shuffle papers around," he'd complained. "You're smarter than any of them and I trust you to get it right." During our work together, I'd learned the true extent of Grandpa's wealth. The house they all knew about was just the beginning. He owned rental properties across 3 counties, held significant stock portfolios, and had business partnerships that generated passive income well into 6 figures annually. More importantly, I'd learned about his real feelings toward his children and grandchildren. "Richard thinks he's getting the bulk of the estate," Grandpa had said while reviewing investment statements. "Serves him right for assuming. That boy's been counting my money since he was 30. "What do you mean?" "He calls every few months asking about my financial situation and whether I need help managing my assets. Your father does the same thing, just more subtly. They're all waiting for me to die so they can get their hands on my money. That's awful. It's human nature. But you've never asked me for anything, Emma. Not once in 5 years have you hinted about inheritance or suggested I might need financial advice." We'd worked together to create what he called his real will, a document that reflected his true wishes rather than family expectations. He'd also prepared a simpler version that would be read first, designed to reveal the character of his beneficiaries. "I want to see how they react when they think you're getting nothing," he'd explained. "It'll tell me everything I need to know about what kind of people I raised." The public will that Richard had described tonight was real, but it wasn't complete. It was designed to test my family's response to my apparent disinheritance. Based on their reaction, they'd failed the test spectacularly. I returned to the reception as Richard was wrapping up his remarks about family unity and supporting each other through grief. People were beginning to say their goodbyes and making plans for tomorrow's formal will reading. "Emma," Aunt Catherine approached me with concern. "Are you all right? I know this must be difficult." "I'm fine. You know we'll always be here for you. Maybe this is an opportunity to reconsider your career choices. Harold always said you were too smart to waste your potential." "When did he say that?" "Well, not in so many words, but we all knew he was concerned about your future." Cousin Michelle joined us. "Emma, I hope you're not upset about the inheritance. Uncle Harold was just being practical." "Practical how?" Not enabling dependency. He probably figured that inheriting money might make you less motivated to improve your situation." "My situation?" "Your career, your finances, your life direction," she said gently. "We all want what's best for you." I looked around the room at my family members, most of whom were discussing their inheritance plans and congratulating themselves on Harold's wise decision-making. "I think I'll head home," I said. "Are you coming to the lawyer's office tomorrow?" Richard asked. "You should be there even though you're not inheriting anything. It's important for family unity." "I'll be there." "Good. And Emma, I want you to know that even though Dad didn't leave you money, we still love you. Maybe we can help you find a better job, something with more stability and growth potential." I nodded and collected my purse, saying goodbye to relatives who either pitied my circumstances or approved of my grandfather's decision to teach me a lesson about responsibility. That night I called Grandpa's attorney, Mr. Harrison, to confirm the details of tomorrow's meeting. "Emma, I'm so sorry for your loss," he said. "Harold spoke of you often and with great affection." "Thank you. I wanted to make sure you have everything you need for tomorrow's reading." "Yes, I have both documents prepared. Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I can be. Your grandfather was very specific about the timing. I'm to read the first will completely, allow for reactions and discussion, and then present the second document. And if they don't react the way he expected?" He was quite clear about that scenario as well. "But Emma, based on our conversations, I don't think you need to worry about that possibility." After hanging up, I sat in my small apartment and thought about my family's behavior at the reception. Not one person had questioned whether excluding me was fair or appropriate. Not one person had suggested that maybe Grandpa's decision was harsh or unjustified. Instead, they'd all agreed that I deserved nothing because I'd disappointed him. Tomorrow they would learn just how wrong they were. The revelation. The next morning, I arrived at Harrison and Associates law firm 15 minutes early, wearing my best professional outfit and carrying a leather portfolio. The conference room was already set up with copies of documents and a recording device for the formal reading. My family arrived in groups, chatting quietly about their plans for inherited money. Richard mentioned wanting to expand his business. Catherine discussed renovating her kitchen. Dad talked about finally retiring early. Emma, Richard said as we took our seats around the mahogany table, I'm glad you came. This is an important family moment, even though your inheritance situation is different. Different how? I asked. With you not receiving anything. But that doesn't make you less family. Mr. Harrison entered the room carrying several thick folders. He was a distinguished man in his 70s who'd handled Grandpa's legal affairs for over 20 years. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult time, but Harold was very specific about his wishes, and I'm here to ensure they're carried out exactly as he intended. He opened the first folder and removed a document with multiple pages. This is the last will and testament of Harold James Morrison, dated 6 months ago. I'll read the relevant sections and then we'll discuss any questions. The room was silent as Mr. Harrison began reading the formal legal language establishing Grandpa's identity and mental competence. To my son Richard Morrison, I leave my house at 247 Oak Street and 50% of my stock portfolio, valued at approximately $340,000. Richard smiled and nodded to the others. To my daughter Catherine Morrison Wells, I leave my rental property at 156 Pine Avenue and 50% of my stock portfolio, valued at approximately $340,000. Catherine looked pleased with her inheritance. To my son Frank Morrison, I leave my business interests in Morrison & Associates and my remaining investment accounts, valued at approximately $275,000. Dad seems satisfied with his portion. To my grandchildren Bradley Morrison, Michelle Morrison Clark and Jennifer Wells Thompson, I leave $50,000 each to assist with home purchases. The three cousins exchanged happy glances. And to my granddaughter Emma Morrison, I leave nothing as I believe she has proven herself to be a disappointment who would not use an inheritance responsibly. The room went quiet. Even though they'd expected this, hearing it read formally was sobering. Richard cleared his throat. Well, that's very clear. Dad was always direct about his feelings. It's for the best, Catherine added. Emma needs to learn to stand on her own feet. Mr. Harrison looked up from the document. I'm sorry, but I'm not finished. There's more. Dad asked. Actually, there's a second will. The room went completely silent. A second will? Richard's voice was sharp. What do you mean a second will? Mr. Harrison reached into his folder and removed another document. Harold prepared 2 wills. The first, which I just read, was what he called a character test. The second contains his actual wishes for the distribution of his estate. That's impossible, Richard said. You can't have 2 wills. You can have multiple wills, though only the most recent one is typically valid, Mr. Harrison explained. However, in this case Harold was very specific that I should read both documents to demonstrate the difference between what he wanted people to think and what he actually intended. Aunt Catherine looked confused. I don't understand. Harold felt that his family's reaction to Emma's apparent disinheritance would reveal their true character. Based on conversations at yesterday's reception, he was unfortunately correct in his assumptions. The color was draining from Richard's face. What does the second will say? Mr. Harrison opened the new document. This is the actual last will and testament of Harold James Morrison, also dated 6 months ago but executed 1 day after the first document, making it the legally binding version. He began reading. To my granddaughter Emma Morrison, who has shown me nothing but genuine love and respect, who visits because she cares rather than because she wants something, I leave the entirety of my estate. The room erupted. That's impossible. Richard shouted. There must be a mistake, Catherine said. Mr. Harrison continued reading over their protests. Emma is to inherit my house, all rental properties, all investment accounts, all business interests, and all personal property. The total value of this estate is approximately $2.7 million. Dead silence. To my children Richard, Catherine, and Frank, who have spent years asking about my finances and making plans for my money, I leave $1,000 each, the minimum required to prevent them from contesting this will. To my grandchildren Bradley, Michelle, and Jennifer, who cared about my death more than my life, I leave nothing. Richard jumped up. This is fraud. Emma tricked him. Harold was of sound mind, Mr. Harrison said. We also have a video. On screen, Grandpa spoke from his chair. If you're watching, you reacted as I expected. No sympathy for Emma, only anger. She's the only one who loved me for who I was, not for money. She never asked for inheritance. That's why she gets everything. The rest of you get nothing. The video ended. Silence filled the room. The aftermath. Chaos followed. Richard threatened court. Catherine demanded medical proof. Dad sat in shock. Mr. Harrison calmly explained the will was legal, backed by doctors and video testimony. They turned on me. You manipulated him. Richard shouted. I never discussed inheritance, I said. He valued me because money was never between us. An hour later, Mr. Harrison's explanation left them no room to fight. Their anger shifted to fake kindness. Emma, maybe we can split it fairly, Catherine offered. You agreed it was fair yesterday when I got nothing, I replied. Richard tried again. You can't handle this wealth. Let me help invest it. The same way you offered to find me a better job yesterday? The meeting ended with them furious, shocked, and desperate. I left with documents and plans for the estate. 2 weeks later, I moved into Grandpa's house. I managed the rentals, investments, and business. My family kept trying to reconnect. Richard wanted fees to manage properties. Catherine suggested living together. Dad wanted to share the wealth. I said no. The inheritance changed my life. I created scholarships, renovated Grandpa's house for community use, and kept working at the library I loved. Grandpa's real gift wasn't money. It was proof that he saw my worth when others didn't. The family who pitied me learned the truth. He'd been disappointed in them, not me. I inherited everything because I valued love, respect, and character, things they never understood. Sometimes, the best inheritance is knowing someone truly believed in you.